I'm Atumcell CEO David Williams here with our head of research and co-founder, Matthew Carr. Matthew, how are you today?
I'm very good, David. How are you?
Good. All the excitement these days is with Anthropic. Anthropic is basically kicking OpenAI's butt, and this latest announcement of Mythos is a big deal in the cyberspace. And they had Glasswing, which is a few of the big cyber and other companies that have come in to get early access and find the cyber apocalypse before it goes on. What do you make of all that?
It's very interesting developments, and I see that there's a lot of capabilities that are actually already out there, and I think Mythos takes it to the next level. And it's been interesting to see the response from other companies.
Way back when, before there was ChatGPT released to the public, we actually had access to OpenAI, and it's actually served us well because, of course, OpenAI doesn't want to be sitting around while Anthropic is eating their lunch, and they announced their own program, this Trusted Access for Cyber program, and we're part of it. How did we get in, Matthew? You just told me it had happened. I didn't even know it was out there.
Yeah, so we had to apply. We did it through our Atumcell organization and a few verification steps. Seems that they are taking the right precautions to make sure it rolls out to cyber practitioners. But I was very excited to get access to that and for us to be able to test it.
One of the things that we've been focused on a lot is the industrial area, operational technologies. And of course, we're not the only researchers either, using Mythos or using the new OpenAI ChatGPT for cyber. So we're focusing on the industrial. What does that even mean that we're doing?
So we're using this model and capability and others to look at software, whether it's firmware, whether it's widely used SCADA systems or human machine interfaces, and we're looking for vulnerabilities within those systems.
Now, this program was only announced 2 days ago. Did we find any yet?
Yes, David, it's been very effective. We found almost 100 CVEs across varying levels of severity.
Well, that's pretty good because I think we don't normally find that. It takes us a while to find that many. We do maintain our own databases, particularly on the industrial system side. And maybe just let our listeners know about what we do there and how this new approach is actually going to enhance that.
Yeah, so we maintain an OT-CV database. We feel that we are able to add enrichment to current CVs that is just missing certain information that we feel is valuable to defenders. Given this capability, we've been able to really step up our capability in looking for vulnerabilities, and that means we can add them to our CV tracker first. And for people that subscribe to it, we can alert them about vulnerabilities within OT systems before it's disclosed by the vendor.
A lot of people are trying to make sense out of how the paradigm is changing with AI in general, and then specifically with what Anthropic and what OpenAI are doing here in the cyber realm. I had a reporter contact me today, and they're saying, okay, maybe this is like chronic disease where there's so much coming that you don't actually try to cure it, but you treat it like something to manage. And my reply was no. If you have hypertension, it isn't looking for new ways to kill you, every day, so that you can manage it. And if you compare that with cybersecurity, where the AI-enabled threat actors are constantly looking for new ways to weaponize any flaws that are not patched. So what I told this reporter was, this approach of thinking about it as like chronic illness, it just normalizes being passive. So you're going to have people in the who are supposed to be protecting it say, well, we're managing it, and that's like saying we've given up hope and we're just hoping that nothing bad happens. I mean, how do you look at this? Is there a better analogy?
Well, I think of it like, cyber is the fifth domain of warfare. And what we can't forget is that OT environments are often caught up in traditional conflicts. And so we're seeing an uptick in attacks based on the Iran war. We see it when there's regional conflicts. And so I don't think we can hide from the fact that it is the fifth domain of warfare. And so I like to see it like the invention of other game-changing technologies in warfare. One of them would be the machine gun, the Maxim machine gun. And so when the British brought that out in 1893, they were able to fend off 5,000 troops with just 700. Now, it really depends what way you're looking at that paradigm shift. I mean, in an OT environment, you have defenders that are let's just say, on a leash. They have change approval, they have very tightly scoped pen tests, if at all. We're talking about a very small percentage that even do pen tests. They have lawyers that are backing them up, and now attackers can find 0 days with AI. It's shifted fundamentally and not in the right direction.
It was reminding me, when I was asked this healthcare example, because that is, I have expertise in healthcare. I was thinking it is more like not like a chronic illness. It's more like a mass casualty event. Like all of a sudden, let's say there's something kinetic that occurs, and you go on and you don't try to save everybody. You kind of walk past those in order to save some. And so I think it actually may be more like that, especially, when these models actually get out there and as they're as powerful as rumored and as you're finding them to be. It might be more like, something terrible happening rather than like a, hypertension that sneaks up on you as a silent killer.
I think it is. And I've seen peers in the community and what they've been finding with AI and with this model and others. And all I can say is we're just lucky at the moment this technology is in the right hands with people that are responsibly disclosing, because I've seen very dangerous vulnerabilities in all sorts of commonly used software just appear in the last few days. And there's been an uptick in vulnerabilities affecting Microsoft. Whether or not AI was used to find those, we're not 100% sure, but it seems to be a very interesting coincidence that there's been an uptick in very serious vulnerabilities affecting Microsoft. For example, the latest 0 day that was dropped on X, so it hasn't even been responsibly disclosed. And this is generally because Microsoft handle it very badly. They don't pay the bounties that they say they'll pay, and they treat people horribly historically. So people have resorted to just dropping these on X. And the latest one actually weaponizes Defender to gain system privileges. So it actually weaponizes their own AV, which for a long time has been thought of very good. And so I think these models are being used in offensive research to find these sorts of things already today.
So let me give one more analogy, and then let's talk a little bit about what we're telling our clients, or what we're, the kind of discussions that we're planning to have with them. So I was thinking, again, outside of the healthcare realm, that a good comparison might be like air traffic control. So you've got a very complicated system. There are risks. It's known that no flight is exactly safe, but yet people manage to fly generally without incident. We manage through them. However, sometimes you see things like a ground stop, and sometimes they're cyber related, actually, now that I think about it. But, JetBlue had a ground stop. They called, all flights to be stopped. And then you sometimes will take a plane out of service when there's an incident, like the 737 MAX, even though that could have major implications in terms of convenience and finances. So I think it might be something like that, and that's in a fairly well-run system where there aren't actually a lot of bad actors.
Yeah, absolutely. And interesting you bring up that type of system. So there's a lot of domain-specific knowledge in these areas and how they manage and operate these risks. And I think it's interesting how it applies to OT too, the domain-specific knowledge. For years, the security has been around the expertise, which has been gate kept, and that effectively is gone now. And so the asymmetry is just inverted, and I don't think anyone at that vendor level is prepared, certainly not like they are when it comes to aviation, which is a mature industry.
So let's talk about a couple of areas where you see these OT systems in place that we both have a lot of experience with at Atumcell. So one is in manufacturing. I think of automobile manufacturing. We can talk about that a bit, and some research that goes back almost 10 years now, and then what that means for the present. And then let's also talk about the energy sector, certainly getting a lot of attention with Iran, and about 30% of our business is actually energy sector related. So first, manufacturing, and then energy. What will we be telling our clients? Because we haven't had a chance to talk about this yet, so we're discussing it here in real time.
The message is you have to take defense seriously more than ever. Because of that, the knowledge pool has changed, and the fact that it used to be nobody looks at our code because you needed to know what you were doing. Nobody's going to weaponize it because you need to know what you're doing. And now that's just simply not the case. So defense is more key than ever. For people in manufacturing, are dealing with different kinds of risks, risks of operations shutting down. As you say, our research on that is almost 10 years old now. It's unbelievable. But even what we did with that research, that timeline is significantly shortened. If I had this capability then, it would have taken us 30 minutes, not days, to figure out what we're going to do and how we're going to weaponize it.
So you mentioned earlier on SCADA systems, and let's just refresh for people what that is and maybe how it's used, let's say in the context of an oil pipeline. And I mean, honestly, I know that some of the things that we've been looking at in the past couple of days have been SCADA systems. So what does a SCADA system do? How does it work in a pipeline? And then what does it mean if it's got these significant vulnerabilities?
Yeah, so SCADA stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. So you can imagine any vulnerability found in something that has supervisory control and acquires data. And ultimately, the best way to think of it is like the brain of your operation. And so, if someone could get inside your head and tell you what to think, and control your responses to things, control your arms and your legs, and how you operate in the real world, you would say that's beyond a critical vulnerability. That's a fundamental threat, to your existence and security and safety and everything. And the same thing applies in OT. And so, when we're able to find over 60 CVEs in a single evening of running this against the system, and some very complex bugs that require like multi-step exploitation, which when I read through some of the findings, it reminds me of like an advanced CTF or a write-up for a multi-chain exploit where the attacker had to drop a file here and that triggered that there. And it's just finding these multi-chain vulnerabilities already.
So we talk a lot about defense in depth, because I hope as we close out this initial discussion, the message isn't, just it's completely hopeless, and forget about it. How does defense in depth relate to what we're talking about here? Of attacker all of a sudden able to get inside somebody's head, and all these sort of analogies that we've been using.
Defense in depth is more critical than ever. I think you need experts who really know how IT and OT overlap, because more than ever, OT systems are connected to IT networks. They're connected to telecoms networks through 4G, 5G routers, through all sorts of technologies. And people need to understand how those are connected. You can no longer assume your low orbit sat link isn't going to be delivering a vulnerability or have a vulnerable component. You can't trust that 4G, 5G router doesn't have a 0 day in it, because the cost and complexity of finding 0 days has hit the floor. So I've never believed it was safe to assume a component in your environment is unhackable. That's always been a dangerous line of thought to my mind. But I could see where some people are coming from with that, and maybe not push so hard, on that line of thinking. And that's why I've also preferred an assumed breach mentality. We don't think that's going to get hacked every day or next week, but at some point it might and probably will. But that statement has fundamentally changed now. So defense in depth is more important than ever. Really think of it like fire traps. So with an assumed breach, someone could get here, but your goal is to prevent them getting there and ultimately, causing, devastation, safety issues, that sort of thing.
Well, Matthew, this has been a combination of a lot of fun and very terrifying. So I guess it's like going to the amusement park, but in real life. And of course, the amusement park may use some OT as well. Maybe we'll cover that in our next episode. But for now, let's wrap it up and say, we're very excited for Atumcell to be part of this Trusted Access for Cyber program with OpenAI and ChatGPT for cyber. I'm David Williams, co-founder and CEO of Atumcell. I'm here with my co-founder, Matthew Carr, head of research and technology. Matthew, let's get back at it.